First of all, thank you very much to the organizers, obviously, for the invitation. In my particular case, it's a very pleasure to be here because I'm actually from Valencia, from my hometown, although I don't live here for more than 2 decades. So, bon dia, buenos dias, and good morning to everybody. As Christina was mentioned, I balance between different hats. That means, in one side, I'm in the Chinese law firm, A&Z Law Firm, and this is because I live in China for more than 12 years. And then I became also arbitrator and mediator at Shanghai International Arbitration Center. But at the same time, since a few years ago, I'm in Germany, in Ruhr University, so we create also a research center where I'm the head of management, and this is the reason why I'm in these 2 countries. However, I'm always working in EU-China relations, in particularly in the legal side, but also in digital affairs, right, and data. And I'm very happy that Mike was emphasizing data all the time, because I will touch upon some of those elements as well. So, well, that was me. We're gonna skip it now. Just a few words about us. We are a Chinese corporate law firm, right? So we are quite big, and we work in different legal practices. But as I said, I will focus more in the digital and technical side. And this is why today I will try to apply to supply chains in your area, but in the Chinese context, right? And that means I will try to give you some key guidance and standards that might be useful to be aware of, a case study, a practical company, and how do they apply this new business model, and also the use of data and smart technology or new technologies. And then, of course, I need to mention a little bit about the data governance, because any of you doing international business, you're doing cross-border data flows. And that is affecting the entire supply chains, right? So it's worth it to have a mention. And I'm sorry, I'm very cold, despite I'm coming from Germany, but I'll be a little bit. So it's a pity, actually, that Tom is not here, because Tom will be very nice in the storytelling. He will explain you a little bit more about the economic development in China in the past decades, and he will also explain you about sourcing, where to do the manufacturing and the clusters. So unfortunately, we don't have that. You can go to his LinkedIn and anything. But what I would like to emphasize to you for this presentation purposes is the fact that in China, of course, was the factory of the world, as you might know. It was a very export-oriented model. Having said so, in the past decade, there is a huge transformation in innovation and technology and new technology and the application of that. And that means many companies are trying to apply these technologies. And no wonder that e-commerce is one of the key markets in the world. And so usually, might not sound that good here, but usually I always mention that in China or other East Asian countries, we are very digitalized. We are also in the future somehow. Of course, China is huge, the digital gap exists, but it's a very, very digitalized country. And that has been implemented in companies and also, obviously, in supply chains, the entire spectrum of companies. Having said so, there are also challenges. For example, there is a lack of a specialized human capital, right? There is also a big difference if you're a big company with resources than if you are an SME. So a small company to implement all these new digital technologies may have some barriers, right? And in that scenario, the government is very aware of that, right? But it's in the government's political plans as well to develop the digital economy, right? Yesterday we were mentioning about the impulse and the support that many policies in China try to support the companies. Now, in that sense, and coming to the part that might be less interesting but very important to know in the standards, so the government has developed certain standards and guidelines to support, to enhance, to provide guidelines to provide a set of rules and requirements for companies. Today I would like to mention 4, very briefly, don't worry, but 4 for you to be aware of because they are linked to the supply chain. And since we are in this area, I think it's worthy at least to be aware, regardless if you work in China or with Chinese companies, right? So it's very important to be aware of them. The first one, it goes line with informatization and industrialization management systems. Now that means what? That means that, as Mike was mentioning, right? Data is everything. So how your company stores, collects, reuse, transform, safeguard the data is very important, right? It's super important. Therefore, these guidelines try to provide a set of rules and requirements for companies to explain how to do so, right? And that's what we call the digital management system. So it's basically trying to support or explaining, for example, the division of roles, the data development and management, right? How to apply certain technology, because yesterday was also mentioned, there are many different new technologies and might be applied differently. Now, in that sense, I would like to kind of point out here a little bit. No. I would like to give you just a brief note here. If you're looking with Chinese documents, standards, 标准 is this GB. So this is something for you to know when you're looking at them. If you look, since I cannot point out, if you look to this number there, the timing is when it was issued, but the timing there on the right side is, no, right? And left side is when it's entering into force. And so sometimes this is also worthy to be aware of. Now, when we move to the next standard, I would like to mention this one because it might be a bit more familiar, and this is trying to support companies in the application of security management system, which is basically this ISO 28,000, right? And this is security becomes crucial when we talk about data management, the safeguard of data. And if you are working already applying different data analysis or system softwares, AI, technology, you will notice that there are huge risks in data security. And that will be linked actually with the legal side, which is compliance, right? How to protect that data. So this this standard focus on security management system. When it comes to the third one, it's about the asset management. And so when we talk about asset management, for instance, this will help companies in managing the activities and the planning and the performance evaluation. And that is also very important when it comes to assets, regardless if it's tangible or intangible. For instance, if it's procurement, if it's manufacturing, if it's warehousing, logistics, all that has to be into consideration when we apply the digital transformation in your own company. And last but not least, this guideline is about promoting supply chain innovation and application. Basically, when your company is applying new technology, right? When your company is trying to digitalize any process, how to do so? It sounds very easy, but it's not that easy, and also depends on the size of your company, your resources, etc. So in this particular guideline, the authorities, they try to give a set of guidelines, again, a manual to suggest companies on how to do so, right? So it's also very worthy to have a look and on how to implement. Now here, I would like also to emphasize something for you. I will say why later, but in China, data and data security element is crucial. Of course, if you're working in the supply chains, and yesterday was mentioned, nowadays, we face a lot of geopolitical, geoeconomic issues that affect our supply chains, right? And therefore, the security element is crucial, right? So this guideline will also try to give suggestions on how to prevent, how to mitigate risks or losses, right, that come from security elements. And I go all the time to the mouse, but it's here. Now, from legal side, let's move to something practical that might be more interesting. I wanted to give you one example of a company, Chinese company, right, that was trying to implement or introduce new technology in their in the entire business model. And that means that you will see in many Chinese companies, they are trying to renovate, they're trying to adapt to the new ecosystem. And that means, okay, we need to be more efficient. We need to pay more attention to efficacy. We need to be more in control management, in security. You were talking about custom satisfaction. This is super key in a country, in a market where all the e-services are very much on place, right? Now, as we were saying, this is very easy to say, but how to do so, right? This company in particular, it might be less familiar for you. I'm not quite sure. How many of you know 中国外语? Less. Very good. That's excellent. That's good. Then we can bring something new to you. So this company, they didn't only apply to new systems or digital processes, but they have done it in a very successful manner. So I thought it was interesting at least to share with you some of their practices and why they are doing so. So images, as you can see, they help more than anything else. So the first thing they have tried to implement is this digitalized custom serving center. And what it means that means they have tried to solve warehouse problems, inefficiency, time inefficiency, error rates, inventory problems, right? Cost problems, security risk. Actually, yesterday, I think the lady from Costco, she was also mentioned some of those. So I don't think it's the only company doing so, but it's one of them. Now, another practice they have done is the automatic inventory robot. Probably many of you have also heard about this type of technology or mechanisms, right? So one of the things they have done is using visual recognition technology. They use, as you can see in the pictures, these automated carriers or the flexible robotic arms, right? And with that helps, especially in the warehouse. Now, that is helping a lot the company to change and adapt from a more manual process to automate process. So automation becomes crucial in all these companies. The other thing they have done, and it's less visual, is the AI-powered document management. And I don't remember who, but it was talking also about document management process, right? And using several softwares to mitigate certain risk and to reduce costs, right? So they have done that obviously in their case helps to connect different stakeholders in the process, and also to improve, for example, when you are doing the air or ocean freight booking, when you are doing custom clearance, when you are doing invoices, right? Obviously, this doesn't only improve the situation in the internal company, right, and the communication, but it also improves the situation, for instance, with the customer, right, talking about the end user. So at the end, using these new technologies has helped them to improve their business and to be much more efficient and effective. Having said so, and this is where I want to link now with Mike, all these new technologies, all this digitalization, at the end of the day, rely on what? Data. So data becomes crucial, how you process and how you manage data. And when you are in a global context, when you are in an international environment, that becomes even harder and more complex, because then it's not just within a jurisdiction. It's not just within jurisdiction in terms of legal compliance, right? But it's not within a region. Then we are talking about cross-border. And then you as a company might need to deal with different regions, different legal systems, different compliance, which is very easy, maybe never easy, but it might be easier if you're a bigger company. But the smaller you are, and in Europe we are usually SMEs, maybe very big profit, but SMEs, complying with two different systems become very, very pressuring, very troublemaker. And on top of that, many of those regimes are in contradiction. Let's say they are not harmonized, right? So that makes a lot of challenges for companies. Now, in the context of China, don't get so scared with this, very basic, but I would like at least for you to be aware of. Because in Europe, especially the EU regulation, is very focused on data. You are all very familiar with the GDPR, right? Personal information. You are now maybe more aware about Data Governance Act, right? So data is crucial in Europe. Now is everywhere AI Act, right? And everybody is very proud about that. Blas was talking yesterday about it. So this is in the context of the EU. But in the context of China, it is not behind in data governance regime. So here on the right side, you might have the three main laws. But in this side, you will see there are many measures, guidelines, provisions, and in the context of the Chinese legal system, the laws and regulations are changing very rapidly, constantly changing. And that means your companies really need to pay attention and be aware of what's going on, because otherwise you're not in compliance. Now you might think, in China maybe there is no protection of personal information. That's not right. Actually, PILP is quite similar to the GDPR currently, for instance. Now, big difference, and probably you have heard about that, is we have data localization measures, because data is a production resource. And as we were saying yesterday, this is coming from an official document, such important as the 14th five-year plan. So the government has said data is a production resource, and therefore we need to protect it. This is national security. This is economic security. This is public interest. And this is very important, let's say. And it will have an impact in regulation, and therefore it will have an impact in your business and how you transfer and how you collect that data. So in that sense, you need to be aware of what's going on. Having said so, and as you can see maybe here, but you will not read it very well, regarding cross-border data flows, for example, when it comes to personal information, there are very similar mechanisms and instruments to the EU jurisdiction. So we also have standard contract measures. In the EU, we will say standard contract clauses, but it's quite similar, yeah? Now,
Mireia,
one
maybe
note? Yes, the last part.
the last summary.
Yes, this is the lesson. So one note to mention here is, although it might look that managing your data in your companies is very complex, but there are always solutions. So we usually say when there is a challenge, there is a solution, right? And therefore, I wanted to mention here 4 strategies, 4 recommendations to pay attention when you are working in the Chinese market or with Chinese partners, right? Of course, the first one, yeah, working in a law firm, it has to be legal compliance, yeah? So that will be the first one. But technology and the application of certain techniques are crucial. So for example, data encryption or privacy computing, that will be something that your company should be already using. If they didn't start it yet, start doing it. Very similar when it comes to security and transparency in the data processing. That will be data anonymization and many other techniques. And last but not least, somebody was mentioned this yesterday, when you are working with different partners, right? So you might need to have data sharing agreements where detailedly explain how to manage the data in the entire process of your business. Because at the end of the day, you might be the one with the liability on that. And with that, I would like to finish. Thank you very much for your attention. And looking forward to questions.